Alright, UFC Fight Night Shanghai. Walker versus Zhang full card predictions. I'm also going to do the Road to UFC semifinals, which includes 2 UFC fights, but I'll be going through that whole card. So because there's a lot of fights to get through, I'm going to make it quick. Let's see, first fight of the Road to UFC card. We got Yun Sung Jang versus Kit Campbell. I'm going to go with Jang. I think he's the better fighter. He's got better opponents on the regional scene and a better record. Maybe not better opponents, but he's definitely got a better record given his level of opponents. 7-1 versus the 15-7 record of Kit Campbell. Yeah. Also the younger guy, he's 22 versus 31. He's shown more, you're more likely to improve at that age than you are at 31. So I'm going to go with Yun Sun Jang, or it's probably Sun Jang Yun. I don't know. A lot of Asian names in this card, and I'm going to mess a couple of them up, so gotta give me some leeway. Next fight up the card, speaking of names I'm going to fail to pronounce, Shui Yin versus Aaron Tao. Aaron Tao, I'm going with him. He looked really good against Ryot Dirto on his last fight in the quarterfinals. And I think that Shui Yin is actually pretty good. I like those guys with a lot of experience from China. You'll notice that guys even in the main event of the UFC event, Ming Zhang, they have a lot of losses earlier in the career, but a lot of them don't do any amateur career and go professional at some of them as young as 14. I think Ming Zhang fought his first professional fight at 14 years old. I don't know if the same is true of Shui Yin, but I don't hate his record being 18-5, but I think Aaron Tao is pretty good. His only losses to Elijah Smith, who has he's 2-0 in the UFC. That was on the Contender Series, and he took him to a decision. And Elijah Smith has got a very big finish over whatever that guy's name is, Kazama, by a slam. And yeah, I'm gonna go with Aaron Tao. Next up the card, Lawrence Liu versus Van E or Y Nguyen, Vietnamese name, really hard to pronounce. I'm gonna go with Nguyen. I think that his wait, am I gonna go with him? I don't know. I thought he looked good in his last fight, and for that reason I'm gonna pick him. He's a pretty big underdog, or not pretty big, but he's plus 165, which I'm surprised by because they have the same record and a similar level of opponent. Yeah, I think Nguyen has been a lot more active recently, and he's younger. And I like that. And they're the same size. He's not, significantly small or anything. I thought he looked pretty good in his last fight. So I'm going to pick Nguyen to win over Lawrence Liu. Next fight of the card, Chang Min Yoon versus Sebastian Schley. I'm going to go with Sebastian Schley. He is at Freestyle Fighting Gym in Wollongong. That's a pretty good gym. I don't see him getting, out-grappled or outsized or anything like that. And he looked pretty good in his fight so far, especially against he fought Bergang Gialishvili. Again, pronunciation is going to be wrong. But that guy was in, what do you call it? He was in Road to UFC last season and made it to the final. He fought someone else. I can't remember his name. Shit. But he fought him, and he looked really bad. But he looked good in the Road to UFC before, so I think that's a pretty decent one to have. It shows that you're, experienced enough to beat this guy. And, yeah, especially fighting the gym he's fighting at, I think that Sebastian Schley will look pretty good, and I think he'll beat Chang Min Yoon. Next fight of the card, Agulali versus Nyamjargal Batbayar. I'm going to go with Batbayar just because he's my boy. This is a fully biased pick. Agulali is probably the better fighter. In fact, I think that the Sijuan and Zhejiang fighters from China are going to be the next, maybe not next Dagestanis, but they're going to be the next wave of really good fighters, coming out of Western China. Those guys have really good, everything. But I just like Batbayar. And also, Mongolian fighters, I feel just have a innate ability to finish fights in the first round on Road to UFC. We'll talk about later, Nyamjargal Tumendemberel. I don't know. He just looks really good in the first round. He's explosive. His counter grappling looked good in his last fight. I don't think that Agulali is going to have an easy way of beating him. He might be a little bit cleaner on the feet. He's also really young. He's only 20. He's younger than me, which is a little jarring when you see that. But yeah, I'm gonna go Batbayar. I think he's pretty good. And even though Agulali is cleaner on the feet and probably technically better with defense and offense, I think that Batbayar's got the pop, and he's able to just find a finish in the first round. I could see it being what do you call it? Tumendemberel's last fight on the Road UFC, where he just rocked that guy early and then jumped on his back and got like a no hooks in rear naked choke. I don't know if he's going to do exactly that, but I think he could hurt him and submit him. And he's also pretty young, only 24. So yeah, I like Bat Boy to get a first round finish. Next fight of the card, Don Marfan versus Jaehyun Park. Don Marfan, I'm gonna pick him. He was a pretty big underdog in his last fight. He was fighting Pefaga, I think was his name, who was a really touted like karateka, like Chinese striker, or was he? He was Japanese, sorry. And he looked really good on the regional scene. And Don Marfan just outgrappled him like crazy, didn't let him up. Looked really good for being like a plus 300 underdog. And Don Marfan's only losses so far in his career have been to Quillan Salkild, who has looked really good in the UFC so far. So he looked good against Anshu Jabli, who was also on the Road UFC, and Quillan Salkild also looked really good against what's his name? Yanal Ashmuz, who's really good. So I think Don Marfan's pretty legit. I don't hate having 2 losses in your career this early against a guy who's as proven as Quillan Salkild, and I don't think Jaehyun Park is all that great. Another thing is, if you're fighting a Korean and you're bigger than him, I think that your odds of winning are drastic. Like a lot of the Korean prospects, like Koreans are, especially compared to like their neighbors in Japan, are very good at cutting weight. They're usually like massive. You see guys like I'm so bad with the names. The names are very similar, but a lot of the guys in the UFC, the prospects coming up now, the guy that just fought, what the hell is his name? Kevin Vallejos. He was really big when he first came to the UFC. I remember thinking he was way bigger than a lot of his opponents. Especially, Kevin Vallejos is a small featherweight. So if you're bigger than your Korean opponent, I like your chances to win more. And yeah, just not more experienced, but more experienced against good fighters is Don Marfan. And he looked really good in his last one as an underdog, and now he's got even odds. So I like him. To win this one. Next fight of the card, Sulan Grangbo versus Simkai Zhang. I'm going Sulan Grangbo. I thought he was a really big favorite. I guess not. I don't love fighters out of Singapore. I just feel like it's a very unproven country as far as combat sports go. I don't think that's where Sergei was from. He's from Indonesia, but they fought in the same regional circuit, I'm pretty sure. And Sergei is really not that good. Both these guys fought Peter Daniso, and Simkai Zhang got finished by him, and Sulan Grangbo finished him. So I prefer that win. I know Simkai Zhang was a favorite in that fight. He was supposed to win, and maybe you can say that like a flying knee loss is kind of fluky, but it's not a good look to get fluked, I guess. And Simkai Zhang is an old and not that proven, doesn't have a good record, and doesn't really have that good of quality of opponents. Yeah, I don't think he's all that. I'm going to go with Suyoung Grangbo. Another guy out of Sichuan, Western China. I'm telling you, these guys are next up. You'll see a lot of the fighters from China on this card, and on the rest of the Road UFC have been from Sichuan and Xinjiang. So, keep your eye out for that region. Next fight of the card, Yahweh Ren versus Sang Uk Kim. I like Kim. He's massive. It's 155. Well, he's pretty big for a 155er. He's 6 foot tall, and he looked pretty thick. I think he looked good in his last fight. Yahweh Ren, he's from China, but he's not from Western China, I'm pretty sure. I don't know where Shandong is, but I don't know it to be Western China. Let me Google this real quick. Shandong is Eastern China. So, I don't love that. I like my Western Chinese people. Fighters, rather. So, I think that Sang Uk Kim has got him. Next up the card, Kai Wen Lee versus Keiichiro Nakamura. I'm going with Nakamura. He's looked really good. Kind of the same story. Kai Wen Lee is kind of... I don't want to say he's proven, because I don't think he's like proven. Most of the time people say proven when we're talking about like UFC fights, they're talking about this guy's proven to be UFC level. But I think this guy's proven to be the level that he is, which is like a good regional fighter. But he's old enough where I don't think he's going to improve a ton. And his record is accurate enough that I don't think it's bad to say like, this guy's 15-6. He's of course going to lose some guy who's 6-1, who wins 70% of his fights versus 60%. So. I think Nakamura looked pretty good. I think Lee also looked not bad, but I just think that Nakamura is a better fighter. All right, co-main event for the Road UFC card. I'm going. It's Nyamjargal Tumendemberel versus Terrance Saeteurn. I'm pretty sure it was supposed to be someone else, but Tapologist says otherwise. I don't know. Tumendemberel's had a rough go of things for as far as opponents that he's been given in the UFC. He was originally given what's his name? They got bit. Diego Lima, something like that. And that guy's pretty good. He was then given Carlos Hernandez, and then he fought a close fight that I think he looked like the better fighter in, but ended up losing. And then he was given Ray Surya and Hyun-Sung Park. He didn't fight Lima, Park, or Surya, but that is a rough go of matchups. But now he's being given a not very good fighter in Terrance Saeteurn. It is even odds, but I think that Tumendemberel is being underrated because it's become clear to me that Vegas doesn't really pay attention to fights outside of the UFC. I'll talk about that in the next fight. But Tumendemberel looked UFC level in his last fight. I don't think Terrance Saeteurn is UFC level. I think he could win, but I don't think he's the best finisher. And he's not fighting very good fighters. So I'm going to go with Tumendemberel. Got a lot of finishing potential, and I think he's technically sound in the way that a lot of flyweights are, where it's like they know to look for a left hook when you should look for a left hook. They know when to go for a takedown. They got good grappling control, stuff like that. Like Pantoja or Charles Johnson, guys like that. I think people would call them technically good fighters, but compared to like featherweights or bantamweights or like a good welterweight, their technique as far as like boxing and kicks isn't going to be as clean as you like to see. But it's there's less risk at flyweight, so they usually get it done better than fighters who are more clean on the feet, stuff like that. So I'm going to go Tumendemberel. I think he's got the flyweight skill. I think he's got a good finishing potential. And I don't think... his opponent's taking this in short notice, I'm pretty sure. And he's not very good. So, yeah, I think he's got this in the bag. One of my boys, too, so I hope he wins. And then main event of the Road UFC card, Ming versus Bruna, Brazil. Ming is very bad at fighting. She's not very, very bad. She lost her, in my opinion, she should have lost her semifinal fight on Road UFC last year, and then she was getting schooled for 2.5 rounds until she got a fluke head kick knockout versus Zhao Confang, who went on to lose in this season of Road UFC in the quarterfinal. So I don't think she's all that good. Did she lose? I'm pretty sure she lost. And yeah, Bruna Brazil is just like a run-of-the-mill women's strawweight or flyweight. Now she's fighting at strawweight. She's fine. She lucked bad against Wang Kong, but Wang Kong's pretty good. She beat Molly McCann, whooped her on the feet. That was a whooping. She beat Shauna Bannon, who was another good prospect. I think Bruna Brazil is like a UFC level fighter, and Ming is not a UFC level fighter. She's a catch wrestler who's 5'2", not a very good striker. I don't know. She got the head kick knockout, good for her, but I think that's what most people know. Like if you were to ask 90% of casual MMA fans, who is Bruna Brazil and who is Ming, most people be like, I don't know who Bruna Brazil is, but Ming is that girl that got that sick head kick knockout against Zhao Confang, or against that Chinese lady, as they probably say. And they probably also say, oh yeah, I didn't watch that fight, that was at like 4 a.m., but I saw the highlights on Twitter the next day. And when they say the highlights, they saw the knockout. So I think a lot of people think Ming is good. I don't think she's that good. I'm going to go with Bruna Brazil. All right, onto the UFC card. First fight of the card, Diyar Nurgozhay. Diyar Nurgozhay versus Uran Satybaldiev. Apologize if I just accidentally dropped a slur. I'm going to go with Uran Satybaldiev. Both these guys took short notice fights in the UFC in their last as undefeated prospects. Uran Satybaldiev arguably beat Martin Buday, who had to really stink it up, and this is up weight class. And Diyar Nurgozhay fought Brendan Hubbard, who's like a shitty 205er, and he got submitted off of his back. Or what do you call it? Brendan Hubbard was on bottom, and he finished Nurgozhay with a Kimura off his back, which is pretty. You shouldn't have that. That shouldn't be getting done to you. And then Diyar. I'm gonna call him Diyar. He has this like weird tick where he touches his eye over and over again, and he doesn't touch his left eye with his left hand. He touches his right eye with his left hand, and I don't know. I think that's got to be a bad habit. It's going to catch up with him eventually. He didn't look very good in his last fight, whereas I think Satybaldiev did. You could also expect Diyar to shrink pretty significantly between this fight and his last, because on the Contender Series is promotional for that. He looked massive, and then he has shrunken pretty significantly. He's definitely not, or he definitely was on steroids. So there's that. Next fight up the card, Long Zhao versus Suyoung. I'm going to go with Long Zhao. I think he looked pretty good. He arguably won his fight against Chang Ho Lee, and I think Chang Ho Lee is pretty legit. He looked good in his last fight against, was that Kwang Lee? Who was that against? Yeah, Kwang Lee. He finished Kwang Lee, who I think is a pretty legitimate prospect. Or looked good against Chris Gutierrez. he looked good against someone else in his last fight. So he's a pretty decent, like a UFC level fighter. And Suyoung made it close with, what's his name? The guy who trains with Bryce Mitchell, AJ Cunningham. And I don't like that. AJ Cunningham is not very good. He didn't make it close, but he didn't look very impressive, and he took him to like a decision where it was pretty clear he wasn't going to get a finish. I just think Rongzhu's pretty good. I don't know why he's the underdog. Again, what I said before, if you're Korean, you're smaller than your opponent. Not a good look. I guess Suyoung won his last fight despite being the smaller guy, but I just think Rongzhu is a better fighter. So there's that. Next fight up the card, Yizha versus Westin Wilson. I'm kind of tempted to pick Westin Wilson because he's a plus 775 underdog on Tapology, and I think he opened at like a plus 750. So the odds are going in Yizha's favor, which is crazy. The fact that he's such a big favorite is wild. I'm pretty sure, what is he, like 0-1 in the UFC? He lost to Gabriel Santos, who's pretty legit. So that's not a bad loss. However, Westin Wilson isn't that bad. Like and usually when someone's a massive underdog like this, it's like they're the worst fighter and they're not a good finisher. I'm trying to think. Like Sergei was a massive underdog against the guy from Korean Zombies promotion, because he was a worse finisher, much worse finisher, and he was the worst fighter. But Westin Wilson's a pretty decent finisher. Like he's got finishes in the UFC. He finished Sergei. I'm a speak of the devil. But he's a good submission artist. I trust that Yizha's good enough to not get submitted. 9 times out of 10, or maybe not that, like 7 times out of 10. So I don't understand why Westin Wilson is such a big underdog, but I do understand why he's an underdog and a big one at that. So I'm gonna go with Yizha. I think he's a better fighter. I don't think Westin Wilson's that good. He's probably maybe the worst fighter in the UFC, or one of the worst, but he's always got finishing potential. So, and his only loss in the UFC, I'm pretty sure, are to Gene Silva and to Joannis and Brito, who most people consider pretty good finishers. So don't exactly understand the odds, but I'll go with Yizha. But this would be a pretty big upset. Next fight of the card, Michel Pereira versus Daukaus. I'm going to go with Michel Pereira. He's taking this, or Daukaus is taking this fight on short notice. I don't remember who Pereira was supposed to fight originally, but I was going to pick against him because of how bad his cardio is. But a guy like Daukaus who's taking the fight on short notice, I trust Michel Pereira to be able to finish him in the first round like he was able to do with the middleweights that he finished on that run he went through. That was like Andre Petrosky, Mikhail Oleksiejczuk, and someone else. So yeah, I think Michel Pereira is good enough to finish Daukaus in the first round, and if not, even if he gasses, I still think he's probably the better fighter. So, especially on the feet, Daukaus is not a very good fighter. His only finish in the UFC I remember in his first run was when he got or when he knocked out Kevin Holland with a headbutt. So he can't do that in this fight. At least he's not supposed to be able to. Next fight, the card, Rongzhu versus Austin Hubbard. I'm going with Rongzhu. I've talked about Austin Hubbard, I feel like 100 times this year. He's not very good. I'm not going to pick him against anyone who I think is decent. Rongzhu looked pretty good against Cody Steele. I think he was looking good against Chris Padilla before he got his eye exploded. So I'm going to pick Rongzhu. Next fight, the card, Loner Kavanagh versus Charles Johnson. I'm going with Charles Johnson. Charles Johnson has a lot of cardio. He fights really actively. He's got good grappling, good defensive grappling. He's got good striking. I feel like there's a lot of things. You need to be like a very, very good fighter to beat Charles Johnson, like if you're not going to finish him. And I don't really trust Loner Kavanagh to finish him because, one, Charles Johnson is far and out the biggest fighter Loner Kavanagh's ever fought, at least in a sanctioned fight. And Loner Kavanagh is not very good of a finisher. Like a lot of what he's been doing in the UFC, in his first fight against Jose Ochoa, he just was the better fighter on the outside. I think he had a lot of an air of this fight could get finished at any time against Ochoa because of how dangerous they both looked in I think they're both in the Contender Series. But he didn't get the finish. It was kind of a tit-for-tat fight on the outside that he won clearly but closely. And then his last fight, he was looking a little worse on the feet, so he just out-grappled his opponent. It was Daniel Santos, I'm pretty sure. Felipe de Santos, sorry. For the last 2 rounds, and they got the decision that way. And if he gets behind the feet against Charles Johnson in the first round, like he did against de Santos, I don't think he's going to be able to just take him down or hold him down to the end of the fight. I think Charles Johnson's pretty good. Again, this is the same thing with Joshua Van, where it's like, I think Loner Kavanagh has the skills to be one of the better fighters in the division. However, it takes a different set of skills to beat Charles Johnson, and it takes a experience that he definitely does not have. And I think Charles Johnson is one of the better fighters in the flyweight division. I know his record is I think he's 7-6 in the UFC, but he's fought a lot of tough opponents. He's beaten a lot of good guys, and he's improved a lot, like, recently. Like, I think his last, he went on like a 5-fight win streak before his last fight, and he looked really good in all his fights, like an actual legitimate fighter. And his loss came to Ramazan Temirov. Ramazan Temirov's like pretty legit, and he's like hard to deal with. Like, he's got a style where he's gonna wing some overhands at you. He's gonna be hard to hit. He's gonna be hard to take down and hold down. He's gonna be hard to submit. And I don't think Leonard Kavanagh is all that. And even then, I think Charles Johnson had a pretty good case for winning that fight. So I'm gonna go with him. Next fight up the card, Maheshate versus Zhang. I don't think Maheshate is any good. I know he knocked out Steve Garcia. I think it's pretty clear to anyone who watched their fight since that fight that was a fluke. I think Zhang is a better fighter. I'm going to pick him. I'm not going to put so much thought into it. Next fight up the card, really hard name to pronounce. Taiyilake Nueraji, pretty sure I got that right. Pretty sure I got it wrong, actually, against Kiefer Crosbie. Kiefer Crosbie is actually really good, and his career's been kind of mismanaged recently, I think. Like, I'm surprised he's taking this fight. This is a guy, Nueraji, who never fought in the Contender Series, never fought in the Ultimate Fighter, never fought a road UFC. He's just being, given a position in the UFC because he's in China. And Kiefer Crosbie is a pretty good fighter, I think, who has fought pretty tough opponents in his last few, and is fighting this guy just because he's, a warm body who they need to get this Chinese guy to fight. And I think because of that, he's probably going to lose, because 9 times out of 10 people in his position lose. But I listened to an interview of him a couple days ago, or maybe a week ago, and he was talking about how at SBGI he feels like he hasn't really been taken seriously at the gym, and this is his first, pretty sure he switched gyms, and this is his first fight at his new gym. So he could look pretty good in this fight and win it. I think he's got the skills to be a better fighter than Nueraji. I think he's got maybe not a very good point in his career to get a win or like a resurgence. But don't be surprised if it does happen, especially with how unproven Nueraji is, given that his last win was against a 1-1 opponent. So, again, I think he's good, but and I'm going to pick him. But watch out for Kiefer Crosbie, who at least has proven that he's like around the same level as some pretty decent guys in the division. So, yeah. Next fight of the card, Sumudaerji versus Kevin Borjas. I'm going with Kevin Borjas, the underdog. I think Borjas looked really good in his last fight. He looked good against Joshua Van as well, and he was an underdog in both those fights, I'm pretty sure. Sumudaerji has had some good performances, has had some bad ones. I think a lot of people remember his fight against Matt Schnell, where he rocked Matt Schnell on the feet like 20 times and then ended up getting submitted, even though he was on top. I thought after that fight, I'm like, oh, Sumudaerji, he's a lot better than this performance shows. He's a pretty legitimate striker. He rocked out Matt Schnell a bunch. I know Matt Schnell is chinny, but he looked pretty good on the feet against him. But since then, I don't really love Sumudaerji's performances. He got pretty clearly beaten by Charles Johnson. He got submitted by Tim Elliott, which maybe isn't that bad. And he had a close fight with Mitchell Proza, who I really don't think is all that. And I think Kevin Borjas is kind of the opposite. Like, I saw his fight with Joshua Van, and I was like, oh, maybe this guy's not that good. We don't know how good Joshua Van is, and this guy just got broken over the course of 3 rounds. And then he fought Alessandro Costa, and I didn't like his grappling, and he got finished on the ground. I'm like, that's not very good. But I think against Ronaldo Rodriguez, he looked pretty legit on the feet. I don't think Sumudaerji is a very good grappler, so I don't think he's going to be able to take advantage of the not very good grappling of Kevin Borjas. And I think that Sumudaerji's main advantage is being taller, but I think the way that Borjas strikes, especially in the way he the way he fought on the feet in his last fight, I think that him being shorter is not like a huge disadvantage, and it might help him find the chin of Sumudaerji and get a finish. So I'm going to go with Borjas, yeah. He's the underdog, but most people on Tapology are picking him. That's kind of what I thought would be the case. Anyways, next fight at the card, Sergei Pavlovich versus Waldo Cortez Acosta. I'm picking against Waldo Cortez Acosta, as I have, and I think his last 6 fights. And this time Vegas finally agrees, at least kinda. If they made this fight 2 years ago, which they never would, but if it was, a top 5 Sergei Pavlovich versus an unranked Waldo Cortez Acosta, coming off of, a close fight with Andrei Arlovsky and arguably lost to Jared Van Diyar. He should have lost that Arlovsky fight. He lost to Marcus Ojeri de Lima. If you had these 2 fight then, Sergei Pavlovich would be minus 10,000. But in the context of their careers, Pavlovich is on kind of an iffy streak. He went from finishing everyone in the first round in the first minutes to getting knocked out in the first round against Aspinall, getting completely, I don't want to say styled on, but like had a striking clinic against him, against Volkov, and then a close fight that was like very boring and unimpressive against Rosenstrike. And then, the Cortez Acosta's coming off a couple wins where he was an underdog. I get why the odds are as close as they are. I just think Pavlovich is still a better fighter. Everything that I've said about Waldo Cortez Acosta is still true. Like, he looked really bad against Orlovsky, looked really bad against Van Diyar, looked really bad against, what's his name? Shit, who he looked bad against? Orlovsky, Van Diyar, Rogerio de Lima. He beat Lucas Bursky. He beat a couple, decent, not decent, but shitty guys. He beat Rebels to Spain, who can't grapple. I don't know. I just don't think he's very good, and I think that this is a good way for Pavlovich to get back to his old ways and maybe get a finish. I don't think Waldo Cortez Acosta is good. I think Pavlovich is actually a good fighter, so I'm going to pick the actual good fighter. And if I'm wrong, I've been wrong the last. I said the same thing about Sergei Spivak. I said the same thing about Ryan Spann. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but it really doesn't make a lot of sense to pick Waldo Cortez Acosta, in my opinion. So I'm going to go with Sergei Pav. Next fight of the card, co-main event, we've got Brian Ortega versus Aljamain Sterling. I'm surprised he's such a big favorite, but I'm going to pick Aljamain Sterling. He is minus 300. Brian Ortega's pretty legit. I don't know. Maybe he's not. I'm looking at his recent fights. The fight against Diego Lopez, he looked really bad. The fight against Yair Rodriguez, he looked really bad in the first and second round. He lost the first fight to Yair Rodriguez. He looked bad against Volkanovski. He looked bad against Holloway. I get that, but he was a legit contender at featherweight for a while. He's got wins over top guys. He's fighting a former flyweight, or not flyweight, a bantamweight, who is not small for the division, but a former bantamweight, and he's pretty old, coming off a loss. I don't know. The thing about Aljo is he's got good grappling. You can finish him on the feet like O'Malley did, but if you're going to beat him, the ways you can beat him, you can out-grapple him like Evlev, you can knock him out like O'Malley, or you can do what Jan did in the first fight and just be the better fighter everywhere, just be able to counter his grappling and be able to beat him up in the feet and punish him. And I don't think Ortega can do any of those things. I think he's a good grappler, but I don't think he's a good enough wrestler to do what Evlev did and just beat him in the scrambles. I don't think he's a good enough striker to knock him out like O'Malley, and I don't think he's good enough everywhere to beat him like Jan did. And if you look at past fights in, especially the Moicano fight in Ortega's career, if he's fighting another good grappler, he's not the better wrestler and better grappler most of the time. Like, if he didn't get that submission against Moicano, he would have lost that fight by getting out-grappled and get out tit-for-tatted on the feet. So, I think that's probably what's going to happen here. I think he's a little bit slower and a little bit less technical on the feet, and I think that he's probably a little bit worse in the grappling too, and I don't really see him getting a finish anywhere other than maybe a guillotine or something like that. But then again, I don't really Aljo fought what's his name, Movsar Evlev, and he fought Jan, who are both pretty, maybe not dangerous grapplers. He just never ended up in a position where I could see him getting finished, even by a guy who's as good at finishing as Ortega. So I don't think Ortega's going to get the finish on the feet. I'm going to go with Aljo. I'm losing my voice. This is the 20th fight of the video, but we're on the main event. This is a joke. Ming Zhang versus Johnny Walker. I'm going with Ming Zhang by first round finish, obviously. We've got a guy who is, all of his wins, he's on an 11-fight win streak. All of his wins in his entire career, I'm pretty sure, have been first or second round finishes, and all of the wins in his winning streak have been first round finishes. All of the losses early in his career happened before he was 20 years old. This is as hot as a prospect as far as light heavyweight and heavyweight go, and you're putting him against Johnny Walker, who has arguably the worst chin in the division's history. Johnny Walker's getting put out by, the first clean punch that Jamal Hill lands. The first clean punch that, I guess Oostmer dropped him with a very not clean punch, and then he got up and he got knocked out by the first clean punch that he landed. He got knocked out by Magomed Ankalaev, who's not much of a finisher. Johnny Walker he's got your favorite chin's favorite chin. He's just not a very good, not a very good chin. He's getting knocked by every punch that hits him, and Ming Zhang is known for finishing people in the first round. So this is kind of sanctioned murder. I really don't see how Walker wins this. Even if it gets past the first round, like it's not going to be like Chimaev versus Duplessis. A lot of people are like, well, if Walker gets out of that first round, he's really got a good chance at gassing Ming Zhang out and finishing him. Like, Walker doesn't even really finish people. Like, I know he's like known for being unorthodox and like spinning elbows and flying knees, but if you look at his career like really closely, ever since like he started fighting ranked guys, that shit stopped happening. Like, he knocked out Paul Craig. I'll give it to him. Fine, it's Paul Craig, with kind of a wacky KO, but Anthony Smith he couldn't finish. Ankalaev Uzdemir he couldn't finish. Krylov he couldn't finish. Like, any of the guys he started fighting legitimately that were in the rankings that were dangerous that he had to worry about, I guess other than Roundtree, but Roundtree was pretty early. He hasn't finished anyone. So I'm going to go with Ming Zhang to either win by first round knockout, or I think that what's going to happen is pretty good chance, like 75% chance he wins by first round knockout, or we get to the second and third and fourth and fifth round and we're like, oh, Ming Zhang is also good at fighting. He's not just good at finishing in the first round, even though he hasn't really left it in a decade or whatever. So those are my predictions. Let me know if you agree or disagree. Pardon me if I'm a little tired. I've been sleeping on an air mattress all week. I've been getting like no sleep. It's been raining. It's been shitty out. I've been a little sick. So pardon that. But yeah. Oh, I forgot to mention these two fights. The Road UFC card is Friday morning. I should be posting this on Thursday. If not, I'm posting this after the Road UFC card, so maybe let me know how I did. And the UFC card is on Saturday, but it's real early. It starts at 3 a.m. Eastern time. The Road UFC card, I'm pretty sure, also starts early. Maybe around the same time, maybe like 4 or 5, something like that. Actually, let me check. But anyways, like the video, subscribe if you liked it. Leave a like if you liked it. Comment if you agree or disagree. Want to hear more about a certain pick. My Twitter is in the description. Shit, I just closed the Tapology link. Let me open that real quick. Let's see. The Road UFC card is at 6 a.m. Eastern time. So, check your time zone. Go watch that card. They're probably pretty good. Especially the last 5. Those are or the last 7, I guess. We got 2 UFC fights in that. So yeah, those should be later at like 11 a.m. Eastern time. But yeah, the UFC card is early. So there's that. Again, let me know if you think of my picks. My Twitter is in the description. Follow me there. I'll be live tweeting the event, both of them probably, depending on if I wake up early to watch them, which I should. And you can watch my predictions for the rest of the year. I got a playlist on my channel with every prediction. I've live tweeted every event this year on Twitter. If you want to go check that out. Again, like the video, share the video, comment if you want to hear more about a certain pick, if you agree or disagree with all my picks, or if you have something to say. That is all. Thank you for listening.